The person on the front page is my sister. Annie choked out the words, her trembling finger pointing at the newspaper. No, that can't be possible. Jonathan Whitmore sat at the head of the breakfast table. One hand rested beside the newspaper while the other lifted a cup of hot black coffee toward his lips. Annie's desperate cry made his fingers open without warning. Crash! The cup struck the marble floor and shattered into pieces. Hot coffee splashed across the pale stone and spread beneath the table. Jonathan barely looked down. What did you just say? He froze, his gaze shifting from Annie to the photograph on the front page. You know this woman? Annie's hand shook violently. The glass water pitcher she was holding struck the silver tray. Clang! The sharp sound made Ellen Pierce, the housekeeper standing beside the serving cart, turn immediately. Annie tried to answer, but her throat had closed. Her lips moved several times, yet she could not force the words out. She swallowed with difficulty, her eyes already turning red. That's my sister. Her name is Maya Carter. She has been missing for 2 months. Jonathan shoved his chair back and rose abruptly. The composure he usually carried had completely vanished from his face. Are you certain? Annie nearly threw herself across the table and snatched the newspaper from his hands. The sudden movement sent a neatly folded napkin sliding to the floor, but she did not notice. She held the page close to her face and stared at the photograph as though the woman might disappear if she blinked. The picture showed a young black woman sitting beside a hospital window. Tangled hair fell around her thin shoulders. A white bandage covered nearly half her forehead. She wore a loose gray sweatshirt several sizes too large for her body. Around the woman's neck hung a cracked employee badge. Its edges were chipped, and the emblem had almost completely faded. Annie touched the small scar beside the woman's eyebrow with one trembling finger. This scar, she whispered. She got it when she fell off an old bicycle when we were children. That day, she pushed me out of the way before the bicycle crashed into a fence. Annie's breathing became uneven. And this silver earring, she always wore it. She lost the other one years ago, but she refused to give this one up because our mother had given it to her. The first tears fell onto the newspaper, blurring one corner of the photograph. Annie looked up, her face drained of color. It's her. I could never mistake her. Her voice broke. This woman is Maya. Ellen Pierce hurried toward them. The stern expression she usually wore had been replaced by concern. She stopped behind Annie and looked over her shoulder at the photograph. Jonathan pointed to the headline. Read it to me. Annie stared at the black letters, but no sound came from her mouth. Her lips trembled, and her breath caught painfully in her chest. Ellen read it for her. Mystery woman found near Birmingham suffering from temporary memory loss. She is currently undergoing treatment and evaluation at a hospital. Old employee badge remains the only clue to her identity. Annie gripped the newspaper so tightly that the paper crumpled beneath her fingers. Memory loss? She looked from one person to the other, silently begging for an explanation. Why is she in Alabama? Why is she in a hospital? Who hurt her? No one could answer. Annie, Ellen said gently, you need to sit down. You can barely stand. I don't want to sit down. Then give me the water pitcher. Only then did Annie seem to realize that she was still holding it. She set it on the table, but her eyes never left Maya's face. She told me she was leaving to look for work, Annie said. The words poured out too quickly, one sentence running into the next, as though she had been holding them inside for 2 months and could no longer contain them. She said she had applied for a position at a large corporation. She told me that if they hired her, she would come back for me. We would move somewhere better, somewhere with safer streets. Annie tried to breathe, but her voice continued to tremble. She promised she would find us an apartment with a decent kitchen, a place where the cabinet doors wouldn't fall off every time we opened them, where the ceiling wouldn't leak when it rained, and where I wouldn't have to study beside a bucket catching water. A painful smile briefly touched her lips before disappearing. She said we only had to hold on a little longer. Tears streamed down both sides of Annie's face. She promised she would call as soon as she arrived. I sat beside the phone all night. I was afraid to fall asleep because I thought I might miss her call. She pressed the newspaper against her chest as though she were trying to hold the sister in the photograph. Then one night passed, then a day, then another week. Her voice grew weaker with every word. I called every hospital I could find. I called bus stations, shelters, and even churches near the highways. I took her photograph to the police station 3 times. Annie wiped at her tears, But the more she tried to stop them, the faster they fell. They kept saying Maya was an adult. They told me she might have left willingly. One officer even asked whether I had done something that made her not want to come home. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Did your sister tell you the name of the corporation? Annie shook her head. No. She said she didn't want to tell me until everything was certain. She lowered her eyes to the photograph. Maya was always like that. She kept every painful thing to herself. She only told me the good parts so I wouldn't worry. Annie's voice caught again. Even when we didn't have enough money for food, she would tell me she had already eaten at work. I didn't learn until much later that she had been giving me her share. Jonathan watched the young woman clutching the newspaper against her chest. Annie was not crying only because she had finally found her sister. She was crying for every night she had spent waiting, for every plea no one had believed, and for the fear that the one person who had always protected her might no longer remember who she was. Ellen's attention remained fixed on the damaged badge in the photograph. Mr. Whitmore, she said slowly, I recognize that badge. Jonathan turned toward her immediately. Ellen pointed to the faded blue and silver emblem. That is an employee badge from Whitmore Development Group. The design was replaced last spring, but the old badges looked exactly like this one. Annie went completely still. She looked at Ellen, then slowly turned toward Jonathan. What are you saying? Ellen hesitated. Jonathan answered for her. The woman in that photograph worked for my company. Annie shook her head at once. No. She shook it again, harder this time. That can't be true. If Maya worked for your company, she would have told me. She was a project coordinator, Jonathan said. She worked in our community development division. For how long? Nearly 2 years. Annie stepped backward. Her heel struck the leg of a chair, causing her to lose her balance. Ellen reached for her, but Annie quickly caught the edge of the table. Nearly 2 years? Yes. You knew her? I met her several times. Annie's eyes widened. You met her? I saw her during several meetings. You saw her. You spoke to her. Annie's voice trembled. And you never knew she had disappeared? I did not know Maya was your sister, but you knew she was your employee. The pain inside Annie suddenly erupted into uncontrollable fury. She turned toward Ellen and seized the front of the woman's jacket like someone drowning, desperately reaching for anyone who might have an answer. Where is she? Annie cried. Please tell me where my sister is. Ellen did not raise her voice or push Annie away. She placed both hands over Annie's wrists and gently held the hands that were trembling so violently. I don't know, Annie. You just said she worked for the company. She did, but I work in this house. I do not have access to the corporation's personnel records. Then why does she look like this? Annie turned the newspaper toward Ellen as tears continued falling onto the photograph. Why is she hurt? Why can't she remember her own name? Why, after being missing for 2 months, is the only thing anyone found on her an old badge from his company? Jonathan walked around the table. Let go of Mrs. Pierce. Annie spun toward him. There was no longer any fear in her eyes. Even though she was standing before a powerful man, there was only the desperation of a younger sister who had found Maya unable to remember even herself. Don't give me orders. The shout tore from her throat, leaving her voice hoarse. My sister disappeared after working for you. Now she is on the front page, injured, lying in a hospital, and she doesn't even know who she is. Annie pointed toward Maya's face in the photograph. And you're standing there telling me to calm down? Jonathan did not become angry. He looked at Annie's hands, still gripping Ellen's jacket, and then at her tear-soaked face. You have every right to be angry, he said. You have every right to demand answers. But Ellen did not cause this. Annie looked at the housekeeper. Her hands slowly fell away. I'm sorry, she whispered, barely able to speak. I don't know who else to ask. Ellen adjusted her jacket but did not move away. She remained beside Annie, placing one hand behind her back in case her legs gave way. Jonathan took the newspaper and quickly read the article beneath the photograph. The woman had been found 3 days earlier near a small church outside Birmingham. A passing driver had seen her staggering along the roadside, her clothes damp with morning dew. When asked for her name and address, she had been unable to answer. The driver had taken her to a county medical center. After several days of searching missing person records without success, the hospital had released her photograph in the hope that someone would recognize her. Jonathan continued reading, then suddenly stopped. The article says she kept repeating one name. Annie's head snapped up. What name? Jonathan looked at her. His expression grew heavy. Annie. All the strength seemed to leave her body. Annie's knees buckled. Ellen quickly caught her arm and held her up before she fell to the floor. She remembers me. Annie spoke in a voice so small that it was painful to hear. She doesn't remember her own name, but she still remembers me. She pressed one hand over her mouth, trying to hold back a sob. She must have been so frightened. She was in a strange place, unable to remember who she was or where she was supposed to go, and she was still calling my name. Ellen gently squeezed her shoulder. Some part of Maya is still trying to find its way back to you. Annie lowered her head. Tears fell onto the back of her hand. But I didn't find her. You never stopped looking, Ellen said. No one was willing to listen to you. Jonathan immediately reached for his phone. I'm calling the medical center now. We will confirm Maya's condition and arrange to bring her home. Before he could walk away, Annie grabbed his sleeve. Wait. Jonathan stopped. Annie looked up at him. Her face was still wet with tears, but a deep suspicion had entered her eyes. First, tell me why she stopped working for you. Jonathan looked at the small hand gripping his sleeve, then at Maya's photograph in the newspaper. He did not answer immediately. His hesitation made Annie's heart tighten. Maya told me she was going to look for a job, Annie said. But you just said she had already worked for your company for nearly 2 years. Jonathan lowered the phone. Maya did not leave Whitmore Development to look for another job. Annie slowly released his sleeve. What does that mean? Jonathan looked directly at her. His face was heavy, as though the truth he was about to reveal would not only hurt Annie but expose a secret he had avoided for far too long. Maya did not leave the company voluntarily. Annie's breath caught. Then what happened to her? Jonathan tightened his grip on the phone. Your sister was fired 2 months ago. Annie stood frozen. Fired? She looked back at the photograph on the front page. 2 months earlier was also when Maya had disappeared. A cold sensation crept along her spine. No. Annie shook her head, her lips trembling. That can't be a coincidence. She looked up at Jonathan. The pain in her eyes had become entangled with horror. She was fired, and then she disappeared immediately afterward. Jonathan did not answer. He unlocked his phone and quickly scrolled through his contacts. I know what the termination summary says, he said, but I don't know whether what was written in it was true. Annie stared at him. Her eyes were still red from crying, but her expression had turned cold. You signed the decision, didn't you? Jonathan looked up. My authorization appears on the file. Then you must know what happened. No, Jonathan replied, his voice growing heavy. That is precisely the problem. Annie shoved the newspaper toward him. The front page slid across the table and stopped beneath Jonathan's hand. Maya's photograph showed her in hospital clothing beneath a headline about an unidentified woman suffering from memory loss. My sister is lying in some unfamiliar medical center, unable to remember her own name. Annie's voice trembled. And you're telling me that you signed a decision that may have destroyed her life without knowing the truth behind it? Ellen reached for Annie's arm, but Annie immediately moved away. She could not bear another comforting gesture. Not while her sister's face was printed in the newspaper as though Maya had no family, no past, and no one waiting for her. Jonathan started to respond, but Ellen spoke first. Sir, we can investigate the termination later. She looked at Maya's photograph, then at Annie's trembling hands. We need to find her first. She is alone, and she cannot even remember her own name. This is not the time to argue about who is right or wrong. Jonathan looked at Ellen for a moment, then nodded. You're right. He turned to Annie. I will answer every question you have, but first, we need to confirm where your sister is and make sure she is safe. Annie gripped the edge of the table. If something has happened to her, we will not leave her there alone, Ellen said firmly. Not for another hour if there is anything we can do to prevent it. Jonathan immediately placed the call on speaker and dialed the number printed beneath the newspaper article. After being transferred twice, a woman answered. Jefferson County Women's Assistance Center. This is Denise Harper, the director. My name is Jonathan Whitmore, he said. I'm calling about the unidentified woman featured in this morning's newspaper. If Maya calling Annie's name touched your heart, please like this video. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from. And subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories. There was a brief pause on the other end. We've received a great many calls since the story was published. I cannot release medical information to anyone who has not been verified as family. Her younger sister is here with me. Annie immediately moved closer to the phone. My name is Annie Carter. She spoke so quickly that she nearly ran out of breath. Please, I just need to know whether my sister is all right. Denise's voice softened, though she remained cautious. Miss Carter, I'm going to ask you several questions. Please answer as accurately as you can. Ask me anything. What is your sister's full name? Maya Elise Carter. Her date of birth? Annie answered immediately, without needing to think. Does she have any identifying marks? She has a thin scar beside her left eyebrow. There's also a small burn mark on the inside of her right wrist. Annie paused, her lips trembling. She got the burn when she pulled me away from the stove when I was little. Jonathan watched her. Annie remembered every detail about Maya clearly. Denise continued. Can you describe the earring she is wearing? It's silver and shaped like a small leaf. She only wears one. She lost the other one years ago. The sound of typing came through the speaker. All right, Denise said. The information you've provided matches our records. We still need a copy of your identification and documentation proving your relationship before we can complete the formal verification, but I believe we have found the right family. Annie pressed both hands against the table. Can I speak to her? She is resting at the moment. She becomes easily distressed when too many people ask her questions. The doctor has requested that calls be limited until the initial evaluation is complete. Does she remember her name? Not yet. Annie swallowed. Does she remember mine? Denise was silent for a moment. Whenever she becomes frightened, she repeatedly says the word Annie. We don't yet know whether it refers to a person, a place, or a memory. Annie's lips began to tremble. It's me. She raised one hand to her mouth, struggling to hold back a sob. She's calling for me. We believe that may be true. The strength seemed to leave Annie's knees. Ellen immediately pulled a chair behind her so she could sit down. For 2 months, Annie had called Maya's phone until every attempt disconnected. She had posted her sister's photograph at bus stations, hospitals, churches, and convenience stores. She had walked every street they had once visited together, stood at countless doors, and repeated Maya's name to people who did not have the patience to hear the entire story. There had been nights when Annie held Maya's old coat against her chest, terrified that it might be the last piece of her sister she would ever have. Now all those fears narrowed into one undeniable truth. Maya was alive. When can I come? Annie asked. As soon as your identity has been verified. I'll send secure instructions to Mr. Whitmore's office. Jonathan leaned toward the phone. What is her medical condition? I can provide only general information until Miss Carter is confirmed as her next of kin. Maya is stable. She can eat, speak, and walk without assistance. She is experiencing memory loss, but the physician has not yet completed the neurological evaluation. Has anyone hurt her? Annie asked immediately. We have no evidence that she is currently in danger. Right now, what she needs most is rest, a complete medical examination, and someone familiar beside her. Annie slowly released her breath. Only then did she realize how long she had been holding it. Please tell her I'm coming. I will. The call ended. Marcus immediately took Annie's identification and sent the required documents through the center's secure system. Jonathan turned to Ellen. Prepare everything Annie may need, clothes, medication, and food for the journey. Arrange paid emergency leave for her as well. I don't need charity, Annie said. This is not charity, Jonathan replied. You work here, and your sister is facing a family emergency. You knew Maya worked for your company. Your wife knew her too. Annie pointed at the newspaper. Now my sister is in Alabama, unable to remember who she is. I am not leaving this house until someone tells me why she was fired. Ellen placed one hand on the table, gently but firmly. Annie, you will learn the truth. Annie looked at her. But not right now, Ellen continued. Maya is waiting for you. If she is still calling your name whenever she becomes frightened, then the most important thing is for her to see her sister. But what if her termination is connected to her disappearance? Jonathan answered immediately. That is why I will have the file investigated while we are traveling. He turned to Marcus. Request Maya Carter's complete employment file. Complaints, emails, building access records, meeting notes, and every attached document. Marcus picked up his tablet. If the legal department restricted access, reopening the file will leave a record. Good, Jonathan said. Let it. Do you want to wait until the documents arrive before we leave? No. Jonathan took his jacket from the back of the chair. The file can be sent while we're on the road. Maya should not have to keep waiting simply because we want every answer before we act. Ellen nodded. He's right. The first priority is getting Annie to her sister. Every explanation can wait. Annie looked from Ellen to Jonathan. She still did not trust them. Her anger remained. But the thought of Maya repeating her name in fear made it impossible for her to delay another minute. Jonathan called his executive office. "Send me every document connected to Maya Carter's termination, not the summary. I want the complete file." A voice answered through the phone, too faint for Annie to understand. "No," Jonathan said. "I'm not waiting until the end of the day. Send it immediately." He ended the call. Annie continued watching him. "What does the summary say?" Jonathan did not avoid the question. "It says Maya crossed professional boundaries with senior leadership." "What boundaries?" "The file claims that she requested private meetings outside the usual procedures and sent personal messages to me. My sister would never do that." Annie answered immediately, without a second of hesitation. Jonathan continued. "The report also claims that she behaved inappropriately toward my wife." Annie's face hardened. "Inappropriately how?" "The language is deliberately vague." "Who filed the complaint?" Jonathan did not need to wait for the complete file. "My wife." Ellen's hand stopped above the tray. Annie gave a short laugh, but there was no amusement in it. "Your wife accused Maya. Your company fired her. Then she disappeared for 2 months. And not one person contacted our family? I didn't know she was missing, because you never cared enough to find out." Annie's voice rose. "You took away my sister's job with one signature, then continued with your life as though whatever happened to her afterward had nothing to do with you." Jonathan stood motionless. He did not defend himself, because there was nothing he could say that would disprove her accusation. Ellen moved closer to Annie. "You have every right to be angry," she said, "but do not let the people who hurt Maya steal any more time from the two of you." The words stopped Annie. "Go to your sister first," Ellen continued. "Once Maya is safe, we will come back and make every person involved answer for what happened." Marcus's tablet chimed. He opened the message and quickly read the first few lines. "The center has verified Annie's identity. They can receive her this afternoon." "I'm leaving now," Annie said. "We'll leave in 10 minutes, Jonathan replied. Annie turned sharply toward him. "Wait? I'm coming with you." "No, I need to see my sister. I don't need a group from Whitmore Corporation arriving and frightening her even more. This is not a company visit." "Then what is it?" Jonathan looked down at Maya's photograph in the newspaper. Her damaged employee badge rested against her hospital clothing, like the final piece of a life someone had torn apart. "It is the first thing I can do that does not require you to trust me." Before Annie could answer, the sound of high heels came from the hallway. Victoria Whitmore entered wearing a cream-colored suit. Her gaze moved from the spilled coffee on the floor to the broken pieces of the cup, then to the newspaper on the table before settling on Annie. "What happened?" Jonathan picked up the newspaper and folded the front page so Maya's photograph faced Victoria. "Do you remember Maya Carter?" For one brief moment, the smile disappeared from Victoria's lips. Her pupils narrowed, and the hand resting near her hip tightened instinctively. But only a second later, she regained her composure. Victoria smiled. "Of course," she replied. "She was the employee we were forced to dismiss." Victoria kept her smile in place, but her eyes remained on Maya's photograph. "She no longer works for the company," she said. "I don't understand why that concerns anyone in this house." Annie moved between Victoria and the newspaper. "It concerns me because she's my sister." Victoria looked at Annie's housekeeping uniform, then at Jonathan. "Who is she?" "Annie Carter," Jonathan said. "Maya's younger sister." A slight movement crossed Victoria's face before she turned toward Ellen. "How did she get hired here?" "I hired her through the regular staffing process," Ellen replied. "Her work record was clean, and she met every requirement. This is an extraordinary coincidence." "It may be," Jonathan said. "Right now it is irrelevant." Annie did not care whether Victoria found the situation unusual. She held up the newspaper, forcing the photograph into view. "Maya has been missing for 2 months. She was found in Alabama with memory loss, wearing an old badge from your husband's company. I want to know what you did to her." Victoria's posture stiffened. "You should be careful with accusations." "Then give me another explanation." "Your sister was dismissed because she behaved in a way that made me uncomfortable." "What did she do?" Victoria glanced at Jonathan. "This is not a conversation for an employee." Jonathan's voice remained controlled. "Answer her." "Jonathan, we should discuss this privately. There is nothing private about Maya's photograph appearing on the front page." Victoria placed one hand on the back of a chair. Maya repeatedly found reasons to meet with you. She stayed after meetings. She sent messages outside business hours. When I spoke to her, she was disrespectful. Jonathan's expression changed. She sent project updates. That was part of her job. You did not see the way she behaved around you. I saw a capable project coordinator. You saw what she wanted you to see. Annie shook her head. Maya was trying to build a career. She wasn't chasing your husband. Victoria faced her. You were not there. Neither were you most of the time. Ellen quietly moved the glass pitcher away from the edge of the table. Marcus remained near the doorway with his tablet in hand, recording details without interrupting. Jonathan unfolded the newspaper again. Did Maya ever say she wanted a personal relationship with me? She didn't need to say it. Did she touch me? No. Did she send a personal photograph? No, but did she ask to meet me outside the office? Victoria's mouth tightened. She asked for private meetings about a housing project that was already behind schedule. You always defended her. I approved her work when it was good. That is not the same thing. Annie looked between them. Each answer made the truth clearer. Maya had lost her job because Victoria had interpreted ordinary work as a threat, and Jonathan had allowed a complaint to become a dismissal without demanding proof. You said Maya disrespected you, Annie said. What did she say? Victoria hesitated. She told me I had no right to question her. Did you? I asked her to keep her distance from my husband. Annie's voice sharpened. At her workplace? Yes. While she was doing her job, Victoria's patience began to wear thin. You are hearing only what you want to hear. No. I'm hearing that you accused my sister without evidence. Jonathan turned to Marcus. Has the employment file arrived? Part of it. The communications marked as personal are screenshots. The original messages are missing. Missing? Annie repeated. Marcus nodded. The file contains images of selected lines, but not the full conversations. We need the server archive to verify the context. Jonathan looked at Victoria. Who provided the screenshots? I sent them to Human Resources. Where did you get them? They were given to me. By whom? Victoria looked away for the first time. My assistant handled the details. Jonathan took his phone from the table. Then your assistant will provide the complete record. Not now. You're supposed to be taking this girl to Alabama. This girl has a name, Ellen said. Victoria turned toward the housekeeper, surprised by the interruption. Ellen continued. And the woman in that photograph worked for Mr. Whitmore's company. Annie deserves a clear answer. Stay out of this, Ellen. I would be glad to, ma'am, if this had not entered my dining room with one of my employees in tears. Annie gave Ellen a brief look of gratitude, then faced Jonathan. Did you ever speak to Maya before she was fired? No. Did you ask her whether the accusations were true? No. Did anyone give her a chance to defend herself? I need to examine the records. That means you don't know. Jonathan accepted the conclusion. No, I don't. Annie folded the newspaper carefully, protecting Maya's photograph from further damage. She told me she was going to Birmingham for a new job. She didn't tell me she had been fired. She must have been ashamed. She had no reason to be ashamed, Jonathan said. But she was. That's what people feel when powerful people put lies in an official file. Victoria stepped closer to her husband. You cannot allow an upset housekeeper to speak to us this way. Jonathan turned to her. Annie's manner is not the problem. You're taking her side? I'm asking why Maya Carter was removed from my company without reliable evidence. She made me uncomfortable. That is not a professional violation. It should matter that your wife felt threatened. It matters. It does not give you the right to destroy another person's career. Victoria's face hardened. You have already decided I'm guilty. I have decided Maya deserved an investigation before she lost her job. Annie looked at the clock above the sideboard. Every minute spent arguing was another minute Maya remained in Alabama without anyone familiar beside her. I'm leaving now, she said. Jonathan reached for his jacket. The car is ready. Victoria caught his arm. You are not going with her. Yes, I am. You have meetings all afternoon. They are canceled. For someone who no longer works for you? Jonathan removed her hand from his sleeve. For someone my company failed. Annie moved toward the doorway, then stopped. I'll accept the ride, the hospital arrangements, and help keeping reporters away. Nothing else. Jonathan nodded. Agreed, and I want every page from Maya's file. You'll have it. If anything was changed, deleted or hidden, I want to know who did it. So do I. Victoria gave a short laugh. You both speak as if a mistake in paperwork caused her condition. Annie turned back. I don't know what caused it yet, but I know she left Atlanta after you took away her job and told her no one would believe her. Victoria's face shifted. It was small, but Annie saw it. Jonathan saw it too. How do you know she was told that? He asked. Annie held up the newspaper. I didn't. She looked directly at Victoria. Not until I saw her reaction. Marcus closed his tablet. The vehicle is waiting. As Annie walked out with Ellen beside her, Jonathan remained near the breakfast table. The broken cup had been cleared away, but coffee still marked the white cloth. He looked at his wife. When we return, he said, you will tell me everything that happened between you and Maya Carter. Victoria said nothing. For the first time that morning, her confidence no longer looked certain. Annie changed out of her housekeeping uniform in the staff restroom and returned wearing faded jeans, a gray sweater, and white sneakers. Ellen waited near the service entrance with a canvas bag in her hands. I packed water, sandwiches, and a clean shirt, Ellen said. You may not feel hungry now, but that does not mean your body can go without food. Annie accepted the bag. Thank you. Ellen slipped the folded newspaper into the outside pocket, making sure Maya's photograph would not crease. Do you have something your sister might recognize? Annie opened her purse and checked for the third time. Inside were a family photograph, a blue wool scarf, and a bracelet made from yellow and green yarn. She made this for me, Annie said, touching the bracelet. I wore it until the thread started coming apart. Take it with you. Jonathan came down the corridor wearing a dark coat. Marcus followed with a tablet and a small overnight case. A black SUV waited beneath the covered entrance. Victoria did not appear. Jonathan opened the rear passenger door, but Annie stopped beside the vehicle. I can sit in front. Marcus looked at her. I'm driving. I meant beside you. Jonathan understood. He moved to the opposite side without comment, and Annie took the front passenger seat. Ellen stood near the steps until the SUV passed through the gates. For several minutes, no one spoke. Annie kept the newspaper on her lap and watched Atlanta move past the window. Morning traffic filled Peachtree Road. People waited at bus stops, carried coffee into office buildings, and walked beneath trees beginning to lose their leaves. The city looked unchanged, though Annie's life had shifted before breakfast. Marcus entered the highway and handed his tablet to Jonathan. The assistant center has completed Annie's verification. They're expecting us shortly after noon. Has Maya seen the newspaper story? Annie asked. No, Marcus said. The director has kept television and newspapers away from her. Good. Jonathan read through the notes. They found no identification other than the employee badge. Her bag was gone. Did they say whether she remembers anything else? She recognizes common objects and understands where she is, Marcus replied. She can speak normally, but personal details are unclear. The physician believes familiar voices may help. Annie gripped the yarn bracelet inside her purse. What happens if she doesn't recognize me? Marcus kept his eyes on the road. Then you give her time. That sounds simple when it isn't your sister. No, he said. It doesn't sound simple at all. His answer took the anger out of her before it could rise. Jonathan closed the tablet. The center has asked us not to question her about the accident or her employment. I'm not going there to question her. I know. Do you? He looked toward the back of her seat. I know you want to bring her home. I want her to know she has a home. They continued west as the tall buildings gave way to shopping centers, gas stations, and long stretches of pine. Annie's phone vibrated every few minutes. Some messages came from neighbors who had seen the front-page photograph. Others came from people she barely knew. Is that Maya? Did you find her? Call me when you can. She turned the phone face down. Jonathan noticed. My communications team can issue a request for privacy. Not yet. I don't want your company speaking for us. They would only ask reporters to stay away. They can ask after I see Maya. He nodded. All right. Marcus pulled into a roadside diner shortly before they crossed the state line. Annie shook her head when he suggested lunch. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten since before dawn, he said. I said I'm fine. Jonathan stepped out of the SUV. We have time for 10 minutes. You do not have to order a full meal. Annie followed because arguing would take longer. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee, grilled onions, and warm biscuits. A country song played quietly from a radio behind the counter. They took a booth near the window. Annie ordered tea. Jonathan asked for black coffee, then looked at the cup when it arrived as if the sight carried an unpleasant reminder. A waitress with silver hair placed a plate of biscuits in the center of the table. Her attention moved to the folded newspaper beside Annie. "That's the woman they found outside Birmingham, isn't it?" Annie placed one hand over the photograph. "She's my sister." The waitress's expression softened. "Then I hope today brings you both some peace." "Thank you. No charge for the biscuits," the woman said. "My sister would do the same for me." After she walked away, Annie broke off a small piece and ate it. Ellen had been right. Her body needed something even if her mind rejected the idea. Jonathan wrapped both hands around his coffee cup but did not drink. "What is Maya like?" Annie considered the question. "She remembers everyone's birthday. She sings when she cooks, but she never finishes a song. She checks the door twice before bed. She pretends she doesn't like old movies, then cries before the ending." A faint smile reached her face and disappeared. "She gave up a lot for me." Jonathan looked down at the table. "She was respected at the company. Not enough to be heard." "No. You could have asked her one question before signing that paper." "I could have." Annie waited for an excuse. None came. Jonathan continued. "I let a report replace a conversation. I told myself the people handling it were qualified. The truth is, it was easier not to become involved." "Easy for you." "Yes." The directness surprised her. Marcus checked the time. "We should continue." They returned to the highway. As Birmingham drew closer, Annie's hands became restless. She opened her purse, checked the bracelet, closed it, then repeated the motion. Jonathan said, "You don't have to forgive anyone today. I'm not planning to. You also don't have to decide what comes next. I already know what comes next. I stay with Maya until she can leave. And if she needs more medical care, then I stay there too. You have work and rent." Annie turned toward him. "Don't make this about money. I'm not offering to purchase your trust. I'm saying you will not lose your home or your job while you care for your sister." She studied his face. "Why?" "Because my company helped place her in this situation. You still don't know that. I know enough to take responsibility for what has already been confirmed." Annie looked out the window again. "Responsibility isn't the same as kindness." "No," Jonathan said. "It usually costs more." The assistance center stood near a quiet residential street outside Birmingham. It was a plain, two-story building with white siding, flower beds, and a wooden ramp leading to the entrance. No reporters waited outside. A woman wearing navy scrubs came through the front door before the SUV had fully stopped. "That's Denise Harper," Marcus said. Annie stepped out with her purse clutched against her side. Denise introduced herself, checked Annie's identification once more, then explained that Maya was resting in a common room. "She may not respond the way you expect," Denise said. "Try not to fill every quiet moment. Let her set the pace." Annie nodded, though her legs felt unsteady. Denise led them through a short hallway. Jonathan and Marcus stopped near the doorway at her request. Annie continued alone. Beyond the glass panel, a woman sat beside a window with a blanket across her knees. Her hair had been brushed. The bandage remained near her eyebrow. The cracked Whitmore badge lay on the table beside her. Annie pressed one hand to her mouth. "Maya," she whispered. The woman turned toward the sound. Her eyes met Annie's, searching her face with cautious curiosity. There was no recognition in them. There was no recognition in them. Annie's hand slipped from her mouth. For a moment, she could not move. She had imagined this reunion every night for 2 months. In every version, Maya called her name, crossed the room, and held her so tightly that every unanswered question could wait. Instead, Maya watched her with the guarded politeness one might offer a stranger. Denise touched Annie's elbow. "Take your time." Annie stepped through the doorway. "Hi, May." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly at the nickname. "Do I know you?" The question struck harder than Annie expected, but she forced herself to remain steady. "My name is Annie Carter." Maya glanced at Denise. "She says she's my sister." "She has provided information that matches your records," Denise replied. "You're safe to speak with her." Maya looked back at Annie. "I don't remember having a sister." Annie moved toward the empty chair across from her, then stopped. "May I sit down?" After a brief hesitation, Maya nodded. Annie lowered herself into the chair, keeping enough distance to avoid making Maya uncomfortable. Up close, she could see how tired her sister was. The bandage near her eyebrow was clean, but faint bruising remained along her temple. The gray sweatshirt covered her hands when she drew her arms close. Annie wanted to reach across the table. She kept her hands in her lap. "You used to call me Little Bit," she said. Maya showed no reaction. "You hated when I borrowed your sweaters, even though you always left them where I could find them." "Nothing." Annie felt panic rising. She had carried so many memories into this building that she had assumed at least one of them would open a door. Now they seemed like facts from another person's life. Maya studied her face. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" The question held no cruelty. It came from fear. Annie nodded. "You don't." "Not yet." She opened her purse and removed a photograph. It showed the two sisters standing outside their apartment, both wearing Sunday clothes. Maya had one arm around Annie and held a grocery bag in the other hand. Annie placed it on the table and pushed it forward. Maya picked it up. Her eyes moved between the photograph and Annie. "That's me?" "Yes." "And you?" "That's me." Maya examined the picture for several seconds. "I look happy. You were tired that day." "Why?" Annie almost answered with the full story, then remembered Denise's warning. "You had a lot on your mind." Maya set the photograph down. "I don't feel anything when I look at it." Annie's throat tightened. "That's okay." "It doesn't feel okay." "No," Annie admitted. "But you don't have to remember everything right now." Maya's gaze dropped to Annie's purse. "What else did you bring?" Annie took out the yarn bracelet. The green and yellow threads had faded, and one end was held together by a small knot. "You made this." Maya reached for it slowly. The moment the bracelet touched her palm, her thumb moved across the knot as if following a familiar pattern. Annie noticed. "You always tied the ends twice because you said one knot wasn't dependable." Maya repeated the movement. Her expression changed, not with recognition but with concentration. Then she began to hum. The sound was quiet and uneven. Annie knew the melody before the third note. She joined gently, matching Maya's pace without finishing the tune for her. Maya stopped. "You know that song? You sang it all the time." "Why?" "Because you never remembered the words past the first verse." A small crease appeared beside Maya's mouth. It was not quite a smile, but it was the first expression Annie recognized. "I still don't," Maya said. "That sounds like you." Maya's eyes filled. "I want to remember." Annie moved her chair a little closer. "You will remember what you can. Until then, I can tell you who you are. What if I don't like the person you describe?" "You're stubborn." Maya glanced up. "You leave cabinet doors open. You put too much pepper in everything. You pretend you don't care what people think, but you save every thank you card anyone gives you." Maya wiped one cheek with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "Anything good? You took care of me when nobody else could. You worked when you were tired. You made sure I never went without food. You taught me to speak for myself." "Did it work?" Annie looked toward the glass panel. Jonathan stood outside with Marcus, both keeping their distance. "I'm still learning." Maya followed her eyes. The sight of Jonathan changed her posture. Her shoulders drew tight, and her fingers closed around the bracelet. "Who is he?" "Jonathan Whitmore." Maya's face went pale. Denise stepped forward. "Do you recognize the name?" "I don't know." Maya pressed one hand against her forehead. "It makes me uncomfortable." Jonathan heard her through the open doorway. He immediately moved farther down the hall. Annie turned back to Maya. "You worked for his company." Maya looked at the cracked badge on the table. "That explains this. You don't have to talk about work today." "Was he my boss?" "Yes." "Did he come here because of me?" "He came because the newspaper showed your old employee badge." Maya looked toward the hallway again. "Do I trust him?" Annie considered lying to make the answer easier. Maya had already lost enough truth. "I don't know yet." Maya's fingers loosened around the bracelet. "Do you trust him?" "No." "Then why is he here?" "Because he can help us get you examined by a specialist in Atlanta. And because his company owes us answers." Maya studied Annie as though this response mattered more than the photograph. "You came all the way here for me?" "I would have gone anywhere." A tear moved down Maya's cheek. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I think I left someone waiting." Annie could no longer keep both hands in her lap. She reached across the table but stopped before touching her sister. Maya looked at the offered hand. After several seconds, she placed her own hand over Annie's. The contact was light, but Annie felt the familiar pressure of Maya's fingers. "You didn't leave me," Annie said. "You were hurt." Maya looked at their joined hands. I wish I could remember your face. You know it now. A physician entered and introduced himself as Dr. Samuel Grant. He explained that Maya needed a full neurological evaluation and recommended transferring her to a larger hospital in Atlanta once the paperwork was complete. Maya looked at Annie. Will you come with me? I'm not going anywhere. Dr. Grant smiled. That may be the most useful treatment we can provide today. When Annie stepped into the hallway to sign the transfer documents, Jonathan approached but kept several feet between them. How is she? She doesn't remember me. I'm sorry. Annie glanced through the glass. Maya was still holding the yarn bracelet. She remembers something. She just doesn't know what it means yet. Jonathan looked at the cracked badge beside her. Atlanta is ready to receive her, he said. The doctors will be waiting. Annie faced him. And when we get there, I want the full truth about why she lost her job. You'll have it. Through the doorway, Maya called her name. Not clearly, not with certainty, but she called it. Annie returned to her sister before anyone else could answer. The ambulance left the assistance center shortly after noon. Annie rode beside Maya while Jonathan and Marcus followed in the SUV. Maya kept the yarn bracelet wrapped around 2 fingers, checking it every few minutes as though she feared it might disappear. Annie stayed close without asking questions. Whenever Maya looked uncertain, Annie reminded her where they were going and why. We're heading back to Atlanta, she said. A specialist is waiting at the hospital. Do I live there? In Atlanta? Yes. With you? Annie smiled despite the ache behind it. You're the one who pays most of the rent. Maya considered that. Then I hope I have a decent job. Annie looked down at the cracked employee badge resting on Maya's lap. You did. Maya caught the change in her voice. Did something happen at work? We'll talk about it when the doctor says you're ready. That sounds like something people say when the answer is bad. It means I'm trying not to make everything harder for you. Maya turned the bracelet over in her hand. Were you always the careful one? No, that was you. The answer brought a faint smile, but it faded when the ambulance entered downtown Atlanta. Maya watched the buildings through the window, searching them for familiarity. Some streets made her uneasy. Others produced no reaction at all. Peachtree University Medical Center had arranged a private entrance to keep reporters away. Jonathan's office had issued no public statement beyond a request that the unidentified woman's medical privacy be respected. Annie had approved that wording only after reading it herself. Dr. Helen Brooks met them inside the neurological unit. She was in her mid-50s, with short gray hair and a calm manner that did not feel rehearsed. She introduced herself to Maya first, then to Annie. I understand people have been asking you many questions, she told Maya. For the next few hours, I'll ask only what I need to understand how your memory is working. Will you tell me who I am? I can help you recover information, Dr. Brooks said, but I won't force your mind to move faster than it can. Maya glanced at Annie. She says I'm Maya. Do you feel comfortable with that name? I don't know. It doesn't sound wrong. That is enough for today. The first examinations were simple. Maya could identify common objects, read a clock, follow instructions, and remember 3 words for several minutes. She knew the current year but not the month. She understood that she was in a hospital, though she could not name the city without Annie's help. After the scans, Dr. Brooks met Annie and Jonathan in a consultation office while Maya rested. The initial results are encouraging, she said. There is no clear evidence of permanent damage. She has a healing injury near the left temple, and her symptoms are consistent with temporary retrograde amnesia, made worse by prolonged stress. Annie clasped her hands together. Will she remember me? I can't promise when specific memories will return. Familiar voices, food, music, photographs, and routines may help. Pressure will not. Jonathan asked, what treatment does she need? Rest, neurological monitoring, counseling, and stability. She should not be interviewed by reporters or questioned repeatedly about what happened. That won't happen, Annie said. Dr. Brooks looked at Jonathan. I need to hear that from everyone involved. You have my word, he replied. No one from the company will contact her without your approval and Annie's. Good. She is a patient, not evidence. Jonathan nodded. I understand. Annie looked at him. Do you? Yes. His answer was quiet enough that she believed he was no longer trying to impress anyone. When Annie returned to the hospital room, Maya was sitting upright while a nurse adjusted the blanket. A tray of food rested untouched beside the bed. You don't like it? Annie asked. Maya examined the covered plate. I was waiting for someone to tell me whether I like meatloaf. You don't. Good. It looks suspicious. The nurse laughed and offered to replace it with soup. Ellen must have added these before we left. Maya smelled the soup. Her expression shifted. What is it? Annie asked. I know that smell. You used to make it when I was sick. I cooked? You cooked everything. Sometimes well. Maya gave her a questioning look. You put too much pepper in the beans. You already told me that. I wanted to make sure you hadn't forgotten again. This time Maya smiled. Annie fed her a few spoonfuls before Maya insisted on holding the cup herself. She ate slowly, pausing after each taste. Halfway through the cornbread, she closed her eyes. I see a kitchen, she said. Small, yellow curtains. Annie's heart beat faster. We had yellow curtains 2 apartments ago. Was there a radio near the refrigerator? Yes. It only played clearly when someone touched the antenna. Annie laughed through sudden tears. You used a wooden spoon to hold it in place. Maya opened her eyes. I remember the spoon. That's enough. Don't push. I remember a spoon, but not my sister. You remembered our kitchen. I was in it. Maya set the food down. Does this hurt you? Sometimes. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for being injured. Maya looked at the bracelet around her wrist. You sound like someone who has said that before. Probably you. A nurse brought a reclining chair for Annie. Jonathan had arranged a hotel suite nearby, but she refused it. I'm staying here, she told him when he appeared at the door. The chair will be uncomfortable. So was not knowing where Maya was. He did not argue. Ellen has arranged paid leave for as long as you need. Annie folded the blanket across the chair. I didn't ask for that. No, but you shouldn't have to choose between caring for your sister and paying rent. She met his eyes. Paying these bills doesn't erase what happened. I know. It doesn't make us even. I know that too. Then why are you doing it? Because waiting until I know every detail would be another excuse to do nothing. Annie considered his answer, then nodded once. Thank you for the medical care. The other questions are still there. They should be. Jonathan left without asking for forgiveness. Late that evening, Maya fell asleep while Annie sat beside her reading the newspaper article again. The headline felt colder now that the woman in the photograph was only a few feet away. Shortly after midnight, Maya began moving beneath the blanket. Her hands searched the sheets, and her breathing became uneven. No, she murmured. Give it back. Annie stood and touched her shoulder. May, wake up. You're in the hospital. Maya opened her eyes, confused. My phone. What about it? She took it. Who did? Maya pressed both hands against her temples. I don't know. Annie called the nurse, who checked Maya's pulse and helped her settle. Dr. Brooks had warned that fragments might return during sleep, but they should not demand explanations. Annie waited until Maya's breathing steadied. Then Maya spoke again. Mrs. Whitmore. Annie moved closer. What did she do? Maya's eyes filled with fear and confusion. She told me nobody would believe me. Annie did not ask another question. Dr. Brooks had warned her that frightened memories often came back without order, and pressing Maya could turn one clear image into confusion. You're safe, Annie said. You don't have to explain anything tonight. Maya pulled the blanket closer. Did I know Mrs. Whitmore? Yes, she's Jonathan Whitmore's wife. Was she my supervisor? No. Then why was she talking to me about my job? Annie had no answer that would not lead to 10 more questions. We're trying to understand that. Maya looked toward the door. Is Mr. Whitmore still here? He went home. Good. The word came too quickly. Maya noticed it too. I don't know why I said that. You don't have to know yet. A nurse dimmed the lights and reminded Annie that Maya needed sleep. Annie returned to the reclining chair, but she stayed awake long after Maya's eyes closed. At 6 the next morning, she sent Jonathan a message. Maya remembered your wife taking her phone. She also remembered being told nobody would believe her. Jonathan called within a minute. Is Maya all right? She's resting. Did she say anything else? No. And don't come here asking questions. I won't. Marcus needs to find out whether Victoria met Maya before she was fired. He already started reviewing the records. Not summaries. Everything. I understand. Annie ended the call before anger could carry her further. She no longer cared how many meetings Jonathan canceled or how much the hospital cost. Maya needed facts, and facts were the one thing the Whitmore company seemed to have misplaced. By mid-morning, Dr. Brooks returned with several objects from Maya's apartment and workplace. Annie had provided a family photograph, an old keyring, and a small notebook. Marcus had delivered a copy of Maya's employee badge, a floor map of the corporate office, and photographs of the Community Development Division. Dr. Brooks placed the items on a rolling table. We'll move slowly. If anything makes you uncomfortable, we stop. Maya picked up the key ring first. These are mine? The blue key opens our apartment, Annie said. The smaller one is for the mailbox. Maya turned the keys in her hand, then set them down. The notebook produced no response. When Dr. Brooks showed her the office map, Maya's fingers paused over a conference room on the 22nd floor. I've been there. Dr. Brooks kept her voice even. What do you notice? A long table, glass walls, a screen at the far end. Anything else? Maya pressed her fingertips against the page. Mr. Whitmore is there. Annie sat beside her but did not interrupt. He asks about the numbers, Maya continued. I tell him the housing budget is wrong. Does he become upset? Dr. Brooks asked. No, he asks me to explain. Maya's eyes moved to another part of the map. Someone is outside the door. Can you see who? Maya closed her eyes, then opened them again. Mrs. Whitmore. Her hand left the paper. That's enough, Dr. Brooks said. I can keep going. You don't need to prove anything. Maya looked at Annie. Did he praise me? Annie answered carefully. Jonathan said you were one of the best project coordinators in your division. Maya gave a tired laugh. That sounds like the beginning of something bad. Before Annie could respond, Marcus arrived with a folder and asked to speak with Jonathan by video call. Annie refused to leave Maya alone, so Dr. Brooks permitted the conversation in a consultation room next door, with the door open between them. Jonathan's face appeared on Marcus's tablet. I have the preliminary audit, Marcus said. The termination file was created while Mr. Whitmore was attending a conference in New York. Jonathan nodded. I remember approving it from there. The approval came from your executive account, but the file was opened from a computer in the Atlanta office before it reached you. Whose computer? Your administrative suite. We're still identifying the exact user. Annie folded her arms. What about the messages Maya supposedly sent? Marcus opened the folder. The file contains screenshots, not original emails or texts. Several lines are cut off. Dates are missing from 2 images. And there is no complete conversation attached. So someone selected only the parts that looked personal, Annie said. That is possible. Possible? I won't call it proven until the server archive confirms it. Jonathan leaned toward the camera. Get the archive. The legal department restricted access after the complaint. Remove the restriction. Marcus remained calm. That request will notify every person connected to the file. Let them be notified. Annie watched Jonathan. For once, he did not sound like a man protecting his company. He sounded like a man preparing to discover what his company had protected from him, Marcus continued. There is another issue. Human Resources did not interview Maya before the termination became final. Jonathan's face tightened. Company policy requires a response from the employee. The record says she declined to participate. From the open doorway, Maya spoke. I didn't decline. Everyone turned. She stood with one hand on the doorframe. Dr. Brooks remained beside her. Maya looked at Marcus. Nobody asked me anything. Do you remember that clearly? He asked. I remember my computer stopped working. My badge wouldn't open the elevator. A woman from Human Resources came to my desk with a box. Maya touched her forehead. She kept saying the decision had already been made. Annie crossed the room and took her hand. You don't have to keep talking. I want to. Marcus asked. Do you remember signing a document? No. I asked to speak with Mr. Whitmore. Jonathan's image remained on the screen. No request reached me. Maya looked at him. I believe you. The words surprised everyone, including Jonathan. Why? Annie asked. Because Mrs. Whitmore said he would never see my message. Dr. Brooks guided Maya into a chair before continuing. Marcus wrote down the statement, then closed the folder. I'm requesting interviews with the Human Resources staff involved, he said. There may also be security video from the executive floor and parking garage. Jonathan replied, do it today. After the call ended, Annie helped Maya back to bed. Maya looked exhausted, but some of the uncertainty in her face had changed into anger. I wasn't imagining it, she said. No, I tried to defend myself. Yes. Maya looked at the cracked badge on the bedside table. Then why did everyone act as if I had already confessed? Annie pulled the chair closer. Because sometimes an official file is easier for people to believe than the person standing in front of them. That afternoon, Marcus called again. This time his voice carried no hesitation. He had recovered security footage from the company's parking garage. The video showed Maya walking toward her car on the day she was dismissed. Victoria Whitmore stepped from a private elevator, blocked her path, and placed a large white envelope into her hands. Maya watched the paused image on the tablet. Her fingers began to shake. "I remember that envelope," she said. Annie moved beside her. "What was inside?" Maya kept her eyes on Victoria's face. "A price," she whispered. She wanted to know how much it would cost to make me disappear. Maya keeps her eyes on the paused image. There was a check inside the envelope. A large one. There was also an agreement saying I would not speak about the company, Mr. Whitmore, or the reason I was dismissed. Annie sits beside her. "Did you sign it?" "No." Maya rubs the edge of the yarn bracelet between her fingers. "I told her I had done nothing wrong. She said innocence would not matter once the complaint entered my employment record." Marcus places the tablet on the bedside table. "Do you remember the amount?" $50,000. Annie looks at Jonathan's image on the screen. "Your wife offered my sister $50,000 to leave quietly?" Jonathan's face grows tense. "I knew nothing about an agreement. You knew she was fired. I knew the conclusion, not how Victoria reached it. That didn't stop you from approving it." "No," he says. "It didn't." Maya looks between them. "Please don't argue as if I'm not here." Annie immediately turns back to her. "You're right. I'm sorry." Jonathan lowers his voice. "So am I." Dr. Brooks moves closer to the bed. "Maya, remembering this much may leave you tired. We can stop. I need to say it while it's clear." Maya closes her eyes for a few seconds. "Mrs. Whitmore said the money could help me start somewhere else. She said I should be grateful the company was giving me a clean exit." "Did she use those words?" Marcus asks. "Yes, a clean exit." Maya opens her eyes. "But the agreement also said I accepted responsibility for inappropriate conduct. I told her I would never sign a lie." Annie's anger returns, but she keeps her voice controlled. "What did she say after that?" "She said no major corporation would hire me once her friends heard why I had been dismissed. Then she told me no one in Atlanta would choose my word over hers." Jonathan looks away from the screen for a moment. When he faces them again, there is no defense in his expression. That should never have happened. Maya gives him a tired look. "It happened inside your company." "I know. No, Mr. Whitmore. You know it now. I knew it when my badge stopped working and a security guard walked me to the elevator while everyone watched." Jonathan accepts the correction. "You're right." Marcus asks, "What happened to the envelope?" "I left it on the hood of her car." "Did you keep any copy?" "No. I wanted nothing from her." Dr. Brooks checks Maya's pulse, then tells Marcus the conversation must end soon. Marcus nods and changes direction. There may be another source. If the agreement came from company legal services, a draft could remain in the document system. Jonathan speaks at once. "Search every version, including deleted files." "I already requested the archive," Marcus says. "There's resistance from the legal department. Use the authority of the independent review. They're asking who approved the review." "I did. They want it in writing. You'll have it within 5 minutes." The call ends, and Maya settles against the pillows. Annie pours water into a paper cup and offers it to her. "Why didn't you tell me?" Annie asks quietly. Maya looks down at the cup. "I don't remember every part of that evening, but I remember seeing your college forms on the kitchen table." "So? You were excited. You had made a list of classes and written the cost beside each one. That didn't mean you had to lie. I thought I could fix everything before you noticed." Annie shakes her head. "You said you had an interview in Birmingham." "I may have had one." Marcus checks the transportation notes on his tablet. There is a record of an application to a construction consulting company in Birmingham. They confirm Maya was invited for an interview, but she never arrived. Maya's shoulders ease slightly. "Then I didn't invent all of it." "No," Annie says. "You just left out the part where you were hurt. I didn't want you to give up school. I gave it up anyway because you disappeared." Maya flinches. Annie regrets the sharpness as soon as she hears it. She reaches for Maya's hand. "I'm not saying that to punish you. I need you to understand that protecting me by hiding everything didn't protect either of us. Maya nods slowly. I know that now. Ellen arrives near noon with clean clothes and a covered dish from the kitchen. She greets Maya as Miss Carter and waits until Maya invites her closer. I brought chicken soup, Ellen says. Annie tells me yours is better, but I am prepared to challenge that claim once you recover. Maya smiles. I apparently used too much pepper. Then we already have something in common. Ellen hangs the clothes in the small closet, then places a folded newspaper on the counter with Maya's photograph turned downward. Annie notices the gesture and appreciates it. Jonathan arrives a little later without an assistant or company attorney. He carries a slim folder but leaves it closed. I came to tell you the independent investigation has begun, he says. Marcus has full access to the company servers, and outside counsel will preserve the records. Maya watches him. What happens to your wife? I asked her to stay away from the company until the review is complete. You asked? Jonathan understands the question. She has no official position there. I have also removed her access to the executive offices and company systems. Annie asks, can she still speak to the press? I cannot legally prevent her from speaking, but she no longer speaks for Whitmore Development. Maya lifts her chin. And who speaks for me? No one, Jonathan says, unless you choose them. For the first time, his answer seems to satisfy her. Marcus's phone vibrates. He reads the message, then turns the screen toward Jonathan. The archive team found a deleted draft. Jonathan opens the document. At the top is the Whitmore Development logo. Beneath it appears Maya Carter's name and a proposed payment of $50,000. The agreement includes a statement admitting misconduct and waiving her right to challenge the dismissal. At the bottom, under Requested By, is Victoria Whitmore's name. Annie reads it twice. She planned all of this. Marcus scrolls to the file history. There's more. The draft was created the day before Maya was officially dismissed. Maya looks at Jonathan. So the decision came before anyone asked for my side. Jonathan closes the folder he brought without opening it. Yes. Maya's voice remains quiet, but it no longer carries uncertainty. Then this was never an investigation. No, Annie says. It was a sentence. Marcus's phone rings again. He listens, asks 2 brief questions, then ends the call. The Alabama police recovered a damaged phone near the highway where Maya was found. The serial number matches the device registered in her company file. Maya grips Annie's hand. My phone. Marcus nods. A technician is trying to recover the data. Annie looks at the document, then at the cracked badge on the table. And if the recording is still there? Marcus picks up his tablet. Then Victoria Whitmore may have left her own voice inside the one thing she tried to take from Maya. Marcus arranged for the recovered phone to be delivered to a digital forensics lab in Atlanta. The device had been exposed to rain, and its screen was broken, but the internal storage remained intact enough for a technician to begin extracting files. Until the results came back, Maya rested while Dr. Brooks limited visitors and kept the room quiet. Annie remained beside her. The cracked employee badge lay on the table next to the yarn bracelet, 2 damaged objects from 2 different parts of Maya's life. Do you remember making the recording? Annie asked. Only pieces. Maya pressed her thumb against the knot in the bracelet. I remember thinking nobody would believe me unless they heard her voice. That was smart. It didn't feel smart. It felt desperate. Annie leaned closer. Sometimes desperate people are the only ones careful enough to save the truth. Jonathan stood near the window, listening without interrupting. He had been reading the deleted agreement again, as if each line gave him another reason to regret what he had failed to question. I want the company to provide Maya with independent legal counsel, he said. Maya looked at him. Independent means not chosen by your attorneys. Agreed. And I decide what happens to the recording. Yes. Annie watched him closely. You're agreeing quickly. I spent too long making decisions without asking Maya. I'm trying not to repeat that. Before Annie could answer, Marcus entered with his tablet. The lab recovered several audio files and part of the call history. Maya's hand closed around Annie's. Is her voice there? Annie asked. Marcus nodded. Yes. Dr. Brooks stepped between them and the tablet. Maya decides whether she wants to hear it today. Everyone turned toward her. Maya looked nervous, but her answer was firm. I want to hear it. Marcus placed the tablet on the table and lowered the volume. The recording starts after the conversation had already begun. Some sections are unclear. He pressed play. At first, there was only the sound of movement and distant traffic. Then Victoria's voice came through, sharp and controlled. "You can make this easy, Miss Carter. Take the agreement, accept the payment, and leave Atlanta quietly." Maya's recorded voice followed. "I'm not signing something that says I pursued your husband. You should think about your future." "I am thinking about it. That's why I won't admit to something I didn't do." A brief gap followed. The next words came through more clearly. "No respectable company will hire you once they know why Whitmore Development dismissed you." "You mean once you tell them your version?" "My version is the one people will believe." The recording ended with a rustling sound, then silence. Maya covered her face with one hand. Annie reached toward the tablet and stopped the playback. "That's enough." Jonathan had gone pale. "She used the company's name to threaten you." Maya lowered her hand. She knew it would work. "She was wrong," he said. "She wasn't wrong then." Jonathan had no response. Marcus opened the call history. "There's another detail. Victoria called Maya's phone twice after she boarded the bus to Birmingham." Annie looked at Maya. "Do you remember answering?" Maya closed her eyes, trying to reach the memory without forcing it. "I remember sitting near the back. It was raining. My phone rang, and I didn't want anyone to hear me." "What did she say?" Annie asked. "I don't know yet." Dr. Brooks touched Maya's shoulder. "Then leave it there. A missing memory is not a demand." Marcus continued. "The bus company confirmed Maya left at a rest stop outside Birmingham. She did not continue to the main terminal." "Why would she get off early?" Jonathan asked. The driver remembers she seemed upset after a phone call. She asked whether another bus would return to Atlanta that evening, then walked toward a nearby church. Maya pressed her fingers against her temple. "I thought someone from the company would be waiting at the terminal." Annie's concern sharpened. "Did Victoria say that?" "I'm not sure. I remember feeling watched, but that doesn't mean anyone was there." Marcus nodded. "We have no evidence anyone followed her. The records show she left the bus alone." He brought up a map. A passing driver reported finding Maya near this road 3 days later. The medical report indicates a head injury, consistent with being struck by the side of a moving vehicle or falling after contact. There is no evidence connecting the driver to Whitmore Development. Jonathan said, "So the accident was separate." "Based on what we know, yes." Annie looked at Maya. "You were alone for 3 days?" Maya's eyes filled. "I don't remember." "That may be a mercy," Dr. Brooks said. No one disagreed. Marcus explained that investigators were still reviewing traffic reports, but the main facts were now clear. Maya had been dismissed through a process shaped by false evidence. Victoria had offered money for silence, threatened her career, and contacted her after she left Atlanta. Maya then stepped off the bus early, became disoriented in the rain, and suffered a head injury before she was found. Annie turned to Jonathan. "Your wife didn't cause the accident, but she pushed Maya onto that road." Jonathan did not look away. "Yes." Maya studied him. "Are you saying that because you believe it or because you think it's what we want to hear?" "Because I approved a decision without asking who had shaped it. Victoria used the authority attached to my name, and I made that possible." Maya considered his answer. "That is the first honest thing you've said without being cornered." Jonathan accepted the criticism. "Then I should have said it sooner." Marcus's tablet chimed again. He read the message and frowned. "What is it?" Annie asked. The company's public relations office received questions from a television station. Someone told them Maya was dismissed for personal misconduct involving Mr. Whitmore. Jonathan's expression hardened. "Who released that?" "They won't identify the source." Maya looked toward the closed hospital door. "She's telling the story before I can." Annie took her hand. "Then we don't rush. We make sure that when you speak, nobody can cut away the parts they don't like." Maya shook her head. "I don't want to hide forever." "You're not hiding, you're healing." Jonathan stepped forward. "The company will issue a statement saying the dismissal is under independent review and that no allegation against Maya has been proven." Maya looked at him. "Do not call me a former employee with memory problems." "I won't. Use my name." Jonathan nodded. "Maya Carter." She drew strength from hearing it spoken clearly. Annie picked up the cracked badge and placed it in Maya's palm. "They tried to turn this into the only thing anyone knew about you." Maya closed her fingers around it. "It isn't," Annie continued. "You're my sister. You're the woman who raised me. You're the person who refused to sign a lie." Maya looked down at the damaged card, then at Marcus's tablet, where Victoria's recorded words had become a file no one could dismiss as imagination. "I want the truth made public," she said, "but not today." Dr. Brooks gave a small nod of approval. Maya looked at Jonathan. "First, I want every message restored, every person questioned, and every lie placed beside the fact that proves it wrong." Jonathan replied, "You'll have it." Annie tightened her hand around Maya's. The search for a missing woman had ended. What came next was a fight to return her name. By noon, the television station had turned one leaked sentence into a full story. The report never mentioned the deleted settlement agreement, the altered messages, or Victoria's recorded threat. It described Maya only as a former employee dismissed after an inappropriate personal interest in Jonathan Whitmore. Annie muted the television before the reporter finished. "Who told them that?" Maya asked. "It doesn't matter right now. It matters to me." Maya sat upright against the hospital pillows. The color had returned to her face over the last few days, but the report had taken something from it. Annie picked up the remote and switched off the screen. "The station doesn't have the full file. They have enough to make people think I wanted him. They have a lie. They have cameras, polished desks, and people saying they have reliable sources." Maya looked at the dark television. A lie sounds convincing when someone reads it from a script. Jonathan entered with Marcus a few minutes later. Annie did not give him time to speak. "Your company leaked her record." "We don't know that yet," Jonathan said. "Someone knew the exact language from the complaint." Marcus placed his tablet on the counter. "The station says its source has direct knowledge of the termination. We're checking who accessed the file after the independent review began." Maya looked at Jonathan. "Can your wife still see those records?" "Her company access was removed." "That wasn't my question." Jonathan paused. "She may have retained copies." Annie gave a bitter laugh. "Of course she did. I've instructed our attorneys to demand a correction." Maya shook her head. "No." Jonathan turned to her. "The allegation is false. And your attorneys will write 3 paragraphs saying the matter is under review. The station will read 1 sentence and keep my face on the screen. What do you want me to do?" "Stop deciding before you ask." Jonathan accepted the rebuke. "What do you want done?" Maya looked at Marcus. "Preserve everything. Find out who sent the information. Don't issue anything in my name." Marcus nodded. "Understood." Jonathan added, "The company can state that no allegation against you has been substantiated. That is not the same as saying the allegation was manufactured. We're still documenting that. Then wait until you can say the whole truth." Dr. Brooks entered for Maya's afternoon examination and noticed the tension immediately. "Has she been watching the news?" "Only a few seconds," Annie said. "That was enough," Maya replied. Dr. Brooks checked her blood pressure and asked everyone except Annie to leave for several minutes. Jonathan went without protest. Marcus collected his tablet and followed. "You have the right to know what people are saying," Dr. Brooks told Maya. "But recovery requires limits. You do not have to absorb every opinion from every stranger with a microphone. They're talking about me. They're talking about a version of you created from incomplete information." Maya looked toward Annie. "People will believe it." "Some will," Annie said. "Some people believe whatever allows them to avoid questioning someone powerful. And what if everyone does? Then everyone can be wrong." Maya gave her a tired look. "You make that sound easy." "It isn't. I spent 2 months asking people to help find you. Some treated me like I was wasting their time. They were wrong, too." A nurse entered carrying several paper bags from the hospital reception desk. These were delivered for Miss Carter. The first came from Annie and Maya's church. Inside were containers of baked chicken, green beans, cornbread, and peach cobbler. A handwritten card said the congregation was praying for Maya's recovery and Annie's strength. The second bag came from their apartment building. Mrs. Ruth Henderson, who lived downstairs, had sent Maya's favorite blue cardigan and a stack of cards from neighbors. Maya opened one. "Glad you are back, even if your memory is taking the long road home." She read the sentence twice. "Mrs. Ruth wrote that," Annie said. "She always complains when we walk too loudly. She sounds kind. She can be both." Another card came from a former co-worker at Whitmore Development. "You never acted improperly. You helped me when no one else did. I should have spoken sooner." Maya held the card closer. "Who is Danielle Price?" "I don't know," Annie said. "Marcus, who had returned to the doorway, answered. She worked in Maya's division. She contacted the independent investigators this morning. What did she say? That Victoria visited the office several times before your dismissal. She also said employees were warned not to contact you afterward. Maya's expression hardened. By whom? Human resources, using instructions described as coming from the executive level. Jonathan stood behind Marcus. I never gave that instruction, Marcus said. Danielle believes it came through Victoria's assistant. Annie folded her arms. How many people followed orders without asking one question? Jonathan looked at the cards on Maya's blanket. Too many. Because they were afraid of losing their jobs? Some of them. And the others? He answered after a moment. Some found it easier not to know. Maya placed Danielle's card beside the yarn bracelet. I understand fear. I don't understand turning away after you see someone being treated unfairly. Jonathan met her eyes. Neither should be excused. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen and declined the call. That was the board, he said. They want me to stop using company resources for what they call a personal dispute. Annie asked, what are you going to tell them? That a company cannot call its misconduct personal just because the victim is no longer on payroll. Maya studied him. Will you say that when the cameras are on? Yes. Even if your stock falls? Yes. Even if it costs you your position? Jonathan did not answer quickly. But when he did, his voice was firm. Yes. Maya looked away. She was not ready to trust him, but she had begun to recognize the difference between a promise made for comfort and one that carried consequences. That evening, Annie returned to the apartment for clean clothes. Mrs. Ruth waited in the hallway, with a casserole wrapped in foil. I saw the news, she said. It isn't true. I know. You don't even know what they accused her of. I know, Maya. Sometimes that has to come before knowing the accusation. Annie lowered her head for a moment. Mrs. Ruth touched her shoulder. Do not let people with expensive clothes convince you their version has more value. A lie does not become decent because it comes from a beautiful office. Back at the hospital, Maya woke while a nursing assistant changed the water beside her bed. A television in the hallway played the evening report. Victoria's photograph appeared beside Maya's. A commentator asked whether the former employee had used her medical condition to gain sympathy. Maya stepped into the hallway before the assistant could stop her. She listened as the commentator repeated the complaint and questioned Annie's motives. Please turn that off, the assistant said to the reception desk. Maya returned to her room without speaking. When Annie arrived 40 minutes later, the lights were on. The food remained untouched, and the blue cardigan lay folded across the chair. The bed was empty. The yarn bracelet was gone. So was Maya's cracked employee badge. Annie dropped the bag of clean clothes and reached for the call button beside the bed. She's gone, she told the nurse who entered. My sister isn't here. The nurse checked the bathroom, then the small consultation area attached to the room. She may be walking on the floor. We'll check before we make an announcement. She doesn't know the building. She's frightened, and she just heard people accusing her on television. The nurse called the station desk and gave Maya's description. Within minutes, staff members began checking the neurological unit, visitor lounges, elevators, and public restrooms. Annie moved toward the hallway, but Dr. Brooks met her near the nurse's station. Let the staff search first. I spent 2 months letting other people search. This hospital has 12 floors, Annie. We need to do this in order. Annie held up Maya's blue cardigan. She left this behind. She took the bracelet and her employee badge. Dr. Brooks considered the 2 missing items. Then she may be trying to return to something familiar. What is familiar here? The badge may have made her think of work. The bracelet made her think of you. Marcus arrived with Jonathan less than 10 minutes later. He asked security for access to the hospital cameras and requested the time Maya had last been seen. A recording showed her entering a service elevator, still wearing hospital clothes beneath a gray coat borrowed from the patient closet. The elevator stopped on the 12th floor, Marcus said. What's up there? Annie asked. A rehabilitation gym, 2 conference rooms, and an enclosed rooftop garden. Annie was already moving toward the elevator. Jonathan followed. Annie, wait for Marcus. She waited 2 months for me. I'm not making her wait again. Marcus caught up and pressed the button. The garden is fenced and monitored. She isn't in physical danger. We need to approach without surrounding her. The elevator doors opened onto a quiet rehabilitation floor. A physical therapist said she had seen a woman matching Maya's description walking toward the garden. Security had checked the conference rooms, but the garden camera was partly blocked by morning condensation. Marcus opened a small equipment bag and took out Maya's hospital blanket. A nurse arrived with Duke, the retired German shepherd who sometimes assisted Marcus during security searches. The dog smelled the blanket, then followed the corridor toward a glass door. Annie stayed close behind. Duke stopped near a row of planters at the far end of the garden. Maya sat on a wooden bench beneath a covered section. The yarn bracelet wrapped around her wrist and the cracked badge held between her palms. The garden was enclosed by a high safety barrier. She was not trying to leave. She simply seemed unsure where else to go. Marcus signaled for everyone to remain near the door. Annie walked forward alone. "May?" Maya turned. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "How did you find me? You took the bracelet. I thought you might understand. I understood that you wanted me to come." Maya looked down at the badge. "I heard what they said about me." "I know. They said I followed him. They said I used my condition to make people feel sorry for me. They don't know you. What if I don't know me either?" Annie sat at the opposite end of the bench, leaving space between them. "Then we learned together." Maya pressed her thumb over the damaged photograph on the badge. "This card says I worked there. The television says I did something shameful. Mr. Whitmore says the records were changed. Everyone has a version of my life, and I can't remember enough to know which one is mine. The recording is yours. It's one conversation. The messages are yours. The deleted agreement is real. The people who worked with you are starting to speak. After I appeared in the news, they were afraid. So was I." Annie did not defend them. "Yes." Maya looked toward the glass door. Jonathan stood behind it but did not enter. "I came up here because I thought I should leave before more people turned against you." Annie's voice tightened. "You don't get to decide that for me. I'm trying to protect you. You said that when you hid the firing. You said you had a new job because you thought I couldn't handle the truth. Then I spent 2 months wondering whether you chose to leave me." Maya's face folded with pain. "I never chose that. I know now, but I didn't know then. I'm sorry. I'm angry with you," Annie said. "I'm also grateful you're alive. Both things can be true." Maya wiped her cheek. "You lost your school plans because of me. I postponed them because I had no idea where you were. That decision was mine. You shouldn't have had to make it." "No, I shouldn't. But Victoria caused that. The people who ignored your side caused it. Mr. Whitmore caused part of it when he signed without asking questions. You didn't cause it by surviving." Maya turned the badge over. "I used to take care of you. You still do." "How?" "You called my name when you couldn't remember your own." Maya closed her eyes. Annie moved a little closer. "You spent years handling everything for both of us. Let me be your sister now." Maya's hand opened. Annie placed her palm over it, with the cracked badge resting between them. "I don't want to go back to the room," Maya said. "Then we sit here until you're ready." "What about the doctors?" "They can wait 10 minutes. "What about Mr. Whitmore?" "He can wait longer." A weak laugh escaped Maya. It was brief, but Annie recognized it. Jonathan approached only after Maya gave permission. He stopped several feet from the bench. "I owe you an apology," he said. Maya's expression became guarded. "You've apologized before." "I know. This one comes with a decision." "What decision?" "I'm calling an emergency meeting of the board. The company will announce that your dismissal is under independent investigation and that the evidence used against you was incomplete and altered." Maya shook her head. "That lets everyone think there might still be truth in it." "Then tell me what the statement should say." "Nothing yet." Jonathan waited. "I don't want another executive speaking for me," Maya continued. "I want the full messages recovered. I want the people who handled my complaint questioned. I want the agreement and the recording preserved outside your company. They will be. And when the truth is released, you tell people what you did." Jonathan did not pretend to misunderstand. "You want me to admit I signed the termination. I want you to admit you had the power to ask one question and chose not to." Annie watched him. He could have blamed Victoria, human resources, or the system built beneath him. Instead, he nodded. "I will." Maya looked at him carefully. "I don't need you to rescue me, Mr. Whitmore. I need you to stop protecting the silence that hurt me. You have my word. Your word isn't enough." "No," Jonathan said. "It shouldn't be. You'll have it in writing, and then you'll see it done in public." Marcus stepped into the garden with his phone in hand. The board can meet tomorrow morning. The independent investigators have secured the server archive. Maya tightened the bracelet around her wrist. Then tomorrow, we start putting my life back in the right order. Annie helped her stand, but Maya did not let go of the badge. As they returned inside, Jonathan remained behind for a moment. His company had once reduced Maya Carter to a complaint, a signature, and a disabled identification card. The woman walking ahead of him was preparing to take back every part of her name. By 8 the next morning, Marcus had secured copies of every file connected to Maya's dismissal. The original messages, the altered screenshots, the deleted settlement agreement, the parking garage video, and Victoria's recorded threat were stored with an outside investigation firm. Nothing depended on Whitmore Development's internal servers anymore. Dr. Brooks met Maya before breakfast and completed another evaluation. She asked about the date, the hospital, the people around her, and the reason she wanted to speak publicly. Maya answered without looking toward Annie for help. "You understand that appearing before reporters may bring attention you cannot control," Dr. Brooks said. "I understand. You may hear questions that are unfair. I already hear them on television. You can stop at any time." Maya touched the yarn bracelet around her wrist. "I spent 2 months with other people deciding what I could say. I want to make this decision myself." Dr. Brooks signed the medical release allowing Maya to attend the company meeting under limited conditions. She could remain for no more than an hour, and no reporter would receive access to her medical records. Annie helped Maya choose clothes from the bag Ellen had delivered. Maya selected dark slacks, a blue blouse, and the cardigan from Mrs. Ruth. "You used to wear that color when you wanted people to take you seriously," Annie said. "Did it work?" "Most of the time." "When it didn't, you spoke louder." Maya smiled as she fastened the cracked employee badge to the inside of her cardigan. It was not visible, but she wanted it close. Jonathan arrived with an attorney named Caroline Hayes, who had never represented the Whitmore family or company. She explained that her duty was to Maya alone. "Mr. Whitmore is paying the initial fee," Caroline said, "but he cannot direct my work, see our private conversations, or approve your decisions." Maya looked at Jonathan. "And if I decide to sue the company?" "He will hear about it when the company receives the papers," Caroline replied. Jonathan nodded. "That is how it should be." Before they could leave for the corporate office, a hospital administrator entered and said Victoria Whitmore had requested a private meeting with Maya. "No," Annie said at once. Maya considered it. "I'll meet her, but not privately." Caroline remained beside Maya. Annie sat on the other side of the table, while Jonathan waited in the corridor at Victoria's request. Victoria entered carrying a leather folder. Her cream suit was different from the one she had worn at the estate, but her manner had not changed. "I'm glad you're recovering," she said. Maya did not answer the greeting. "Why are you here?" "To prevent this from becoming worse for everyone." "You mean worse for you?" Victoria placed the folder on the table and opened it. Inside was a settlement agreement and a check. "This would cover your medical treatment, lost income, housing, and any education Annie chooses to pursue. You would also receive a formal letter confirming that your departure from the company was voluntary." Annie looked at the number on the check. It was more money than she and Maya had ever seen together. "What do you want in return?" Maya asked. "Privacy. No interviews, no public accusations, and no release of private recordings." Caroline read the first page. "The agreement also requires Miss Carter to withdraw every complaint and accept that no discrimination or retaliation occurred." Victoria folded her hands. "It ends the conflict without damaging either side." "Either side?" Annie said. "My sister lost her job, her memory, and 2 months of her life." "What did you lose?" Victoria's attention remained on Maya. "The press will not treat you gently. They will question your memory, your motives, and your relationship with my husband. This agreement protects you from that." "You created those questions," Maya said. "I reacted to what I saw. You saw your husband respect my work. I saw you seek his attention." Maya reached for the check. Victoria's shoulders eased, but only until Maya tore it through the center and placed both halves on top of the agreement. "You still think money matters more to me than my name." Victoria's composure slipped. "That is an emotional decision." "No. Firing me without asking for my side was emotional. Editing messages because you were jealous was emotional. Threatening me at a parking garage was emotional. You cannot prove every claim you're making. The recording proves enough." Victoria turned toward Caroline. "Your client should understand that public sympathy changes quickly. Caroline closed the folder. My client understands the offer and has rejected it. This meeting is over. Victoria stood. Before leaving, she looked at Annie. You may regret encouraging her. Annie met her eyes. I regret that nobody encouraged her sooner. Jonathan waited outside. Victoria passed him without stopping. She offered another settlement, Maya said. I expected she might. You knew? I knew her attorneys were preparing something. I instructed them not to use company funds, but she can use her personal money. Annie stepped closer. You could have warned us. You're right, I should have. Maya watched him carefully. What happens at the board meeting? I will present the evidence, announce the independent investigation, and temporarily step down as chairman. Annie had not expected the final part. They're removing you? I'm removing myself until the review is complete. Why? Because I approved your dismissal. Victoria manipulated the process, but my signature gave the decision authority. Maya adjusted the sleeve of her cardigan. Are you going to say that in front of the cameras? Yes. Without blaming everything on your wife? Yes. Jonathan handed Caroline a signed document. It granted the outside investigators full access to corporate records and prevented any executive from destroying, altering, or withholding evidence. Marcus approached with his tablet. The board is assembling now. There's one more development. He showed Jonathan a report from the forensic team. During the night, someone had attempted to delete folders from Victoria's personal office computer. The files included drafts of Maya's termination agreement and messages to the Human Resources Director. Did she succeed? Maya asked. No, Marcus said. The investigators copied the system before she began. Jonathan read the report and returned the tablet. Send it to outside counsel. Victoria had tried to purchase silence. When that failed, she had tried to erase the record. Neither option remained available to her. Maya rose and took Annie's hand. Let's go. Annie looked at her sister's blue cardigan, the bracelet at her wrist, and the edge of the cracked badge hidden beneath the fabric. Are you ready? No, Maya said. But I'm done waiting to feel ready. The board meeting began without reporters. Jonathan wanted the evidence reviewed before anyone stood before the public, and Maya agreed only after Caroline confirmed that the closed session would not limit what she could say later. At Whitmore Development Group, Marcus led them through a private entrance. Maya slowed when the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. The blue and silver company logo covered the wall ahead, polished and familiar. Annie touched her arm. We can stop. Maya shook her head. I stopped once. They kept moving without me. Inside the conference room, 12 board members waited around a long table. Several greeted Jonathan first, then seemed uncertain how to address Maya. Caroline pulled out a chair for her. This is Maya Carter. She is here with independent counsel. A gray-haired director cleared his throat. Miss Carter, we regret the distress this matter has caused. Maya remained standing. My dismissal was arranged before anyone asked for my side. That is more than distress. The director lowered his eyes. Marcus presented the evidence in order. The original work messages, the altered screenshots, the deleted settlement draft, the parking garage video, the audio recording, and the attempt to remove files from Victoria's computer. No one interrupted him. When he finished, Jonathan placed his signed authorization on the table. I approved Maya Carter's termination without reviewing the evidence or speaking with her, he said. That failure rests with me. Effective immediately, I am stepping away from my duties as chairman until the independent investigation is complete. One board member leaned forward. Jonathan, that decision could damage the company more than the complaint itself. The complaint was manufactured, Maya said. The damage began when the company treated a jealous accusation as fact. Another director asked whether the public announcement could wait until legal counsel prepared a more controlled response. Caroline answered before Jonathan could. My client has already waited while other people controlled the response. Jonathan looked around the table. The press conference will take place tomorrow morning. Every document will be preserved. No employee will be disciplined for cooperating with the investigation. The closed meeting lasted less than an hour. When Maya left the building, she did not look relieved. She looked tired. I thought walking back in would make me remember more, she said in the car. Did it? Annie asked. I remembered the smell of the elevator. That was enough. Instead of returning directly to the hospital, Dr. Brooks permitted a short visit to the apartment, provided Maya rested afterward. Annie unlocked the door and let her enter first. The place had changed little since Maya left. A stack of mail rested near the kitchen. College forms covered one end of the table. A photograph of their mother remained beside the radio, and the old antenna was still held in position by a wooden spoon. Maya touched the spoon. "You told me about this. You remembered it before I did." On the living room wall, several missing person flyers remained taped beside a map of bus routes. Red marks showed every hospital, shelter, station, and church Annie had contacted. Maya moved closer. "You did all this? I didn't know where else to look. You should have been preparing for school." Annie set her purse down. "We're not doing that again." "Doing what?" "You deciding what my life should have looked like while you were missing." Maya turned toward her. "I'm trying to say I'm sorry. Then say you're sorry. Don't turn it into another reason to blame yourself for everything." Maya sat at the kitchen table. "I'm sorry I lied about the job." Annie took the chair across from her. "I'm sorry I thought you might have left because you wanted a different life." "I did want a different life." The answer hurt until Maya continued. "I wanted one for both of us." Annie reached across the table. "Next time, tell me the bad part too." Maya placed her hand over Annie's. "Next time, I will." They found chicken soup in the freezer, labeled in Maya's handwriting. Annie heated it while Maya mixed cornbread batter from memory. She paused twice, uncertain about the measurements, but the movements returned as she worked. "You're putting in too much pepper," Annie said. Maya glanced at her. "That sounds like criticism from someone who cannot cook." "It's an observation." "It's disrespectful." Annie laughed, and a moment later Maya joined her. They ate at the small table while late afternoon light crossed the kitchen floor. Maya studied the apartment as if each object offered a piece of herself without demanding anything in return. Jonathan returned to the Whitmore estate after sunset. Ellen found him in the breakfast room, standing beside the place where his coffee cup had broken days earlier. "The board knows," he said. "Knowing and accepting are different things," Ellen replied. "They're worried about the stock price. People often become practical when responsibility becomes expensive." Jonathan sat at the head of the table but did not ask for coffee. "I should have read the file." "Yes." "I should have spoken to Maya." "Yes." He looked at Ellen. "You could make this easier." "I could. It would not help you." Upstairs, Victoria directed a member of the household staff to carry 2 suitcases to her car. When Jonathan entered the bedroom, she closed the final case. "You chose an employee over your wife," she said. "I chose the truth over a lie. You're destroying our marriage in public. Our marriage was damaged when you used my company to punish someone who had done nothing to you." Victoria fastened the suitcase. "You think admitting fault will make them respect you? This is not about respect. It is always about respect in your world." Jonathan opened the bedroom door for her. "That may be why I failed to see what was happening in yours." Victoria left without replying. That evening, Annie wrote her statement on a yellow legal pad. She crossed out every phrase that sounded borrowed from a lawyer or television commentator. Maya sat beside her. "What are you going to say?" "The truth." "Which part?" "That I asked people to help find you, and too many of them decided an adult black woman had probably left by choice." Maya looked down at the cracked badge resting on the table. "I don't want them to remember me only because I lost my memory." "Then tell them what you want them to remember." Maya picked up the badge. "That I did my job. That I told the truth. That neither one should have cost me my name." The next morning, Annie folded the first newspaper and placed it in her bag. Maya pinned the cracked employee badge to her blue cardigan where everyone could see it. Neither sister said she was ready. They walked out together anyway. The press conference began at 10 o'clock in the main auditorium of Whitmore Development Group. Local reporters filled the first rows, followed by employees, union representatives, community leaders, and members of the board. Cameras faced a raised platform where 4 chairs had been placed behind a narrow table. Annie walked beside Maya through a side entrance. Maya wore the blue cardigan, and the cracked employee badge was pinned where every camera could see it. Her steps slowed when the first burst of camera flashes reached her. "You don't have to stay for every question," Annie said. "I know. We can leave whenever you say." Maya touched the bracelet around her wrist. "Just stand beside me." "I will." Jonathan entered from the opposite side with Marcus and 2 members of the independent review team. He did not approach Maya until she gave him a small nod. "The investigators have delivered the evidence to outside counsel," he said. "Nothing presented today depends on company approval." Maya adjusted the microphone in front of her chair. "Good." Victoria's place at the table remained empty. Jonathan stepped to the podium first. He waited for the photographers to settle, then opened a folder containing his prepared statement. My name is Jonathan Whitmore, founder and chairman of Whitmore Development Group. This morning, I am announcing an independent investigation into the dismissal of Maya Carter, formerly a project coordinator in our Community Development Division. He paused, then closed the folder. I wrote a longer statement last night. Most of it explained why I failed. Explanations are not what Ms. Carter is owed. Several reporters began typing faster. 2 months ago, I approved her termination without reviewing the original communications and without speaking to her. The evidence used against her included altered screenshots, incomplete records, and accusations that were never properly examined. My signature gave authority to that decision. A board member shifted in his seat, but Jonathan continued. Victoria Whitmore interfered with the employment process despite holding no position in the company. Human Resources followed instructions that should have been challenged. Executives who had the power to ask questions did not ask them. I was one of those executives. A reporter called out, "Are you blaming your wife?" No, I am describing her actions. I am also describing mine. Jonathan announced that he was stepping away from his duties as chairman until the investigation was complete. He confirmed that Maya's dismissal had been suspended from her record. Every related document had been preserved, and no employee would face retaliation for cooperating. When he finished, he moved away from the podium without asking anyone to accept his apology. Caroline Hayes presented the evidence next. The large screen behind her displayed the original messages beside the edited screenshots used in Maya's file. Lines about housing budgets and project deadlines had been removed, leaving fragments that appeared personal. The deleted settlement agreement appeared next. Maya's name was printed above the proposed payment and a statement admitting misconduct. The creation date showed it had been prepared before the dismissal was final. Then Caroline played part of the recording recovered from Maya's phone. Victoria's voice filled the auditorium. Take the agreement, accept the payment, and leave Atlanta quietly. Maya's recorded answer followed. I'm not signing something that says I pursued your husband. The final exchange was the clearest. My version is the one people will believe. When the recording ended, reporters raised their hands and called questions at once. Caroline reminded them that Maya would speak before taking any questions. Maya approached the podium. For the first few seconds, she said nothing. Annie could see her trying to organize thoughts that still did not always arrive in the right order. Maya looked down at the cracked badge on her cardigan. My name is Maya Carter, she began. I worked here for almost 2 years. I managed project schedules, reviewed budgets, and reported errors that could have affected families waiting for affordable housing. Her voice gained strength. I did not pursue Jonathan Whitmore. I did not send him personal messages. I did not behave improperly toward his wife. I was dismissed because Victoria Whitmore decided that professional respect between her husband and a black woman must mean something shameful. A reporter asked whether Maya believed the treatment was racially motivated. Maya considered the question. Mrs. Whitmore never needed to use a slur. She only needed to believe that I was less trustworthy than she was, less respectable than she was, and easier to remove than she was. Bias often sounds polite when it comes from someone with influence. The auditorium doors opened. Victoria entered with an attorney and walked down the center aisle. Jonathan did not move to meet her. Victoria stopped near the first row. This presentation is incomplete. Caroline spoke from the table. You will have an opportunity to respond through counsel. I'm responding now. Victoria faced the cameras. Maya Carter encouraged my husband's attention and is now using a medical condition to avoid responsibility. Maya remained at the podium. What did I do? You arranged private meetings. They were project meetings. You sent messages at night. The project was behind schedule. You wanted access to a life that was never yours. Annie rose from her chair, but Maya gave her a brief signal to wait. Victoria continued. A girl like you should have been grateful just to be allowed into that building. The reaction moved through the audience in murmurs and quick exchanges. Maya's face remained composed. What kind of girl am I, Mrs. Whitmore? Victoria opened her mouth, but no answer came. Maya repeated the question. A woman who worked hard? A black employee who corrected a budget your executives missed? A person without enough money to fight your attorneys? Which part made gratitude more important than fairness? Victoria's attorney touched her arm and advised her to stop speaking. Annie walked to the podium only after Maya stepped aside for her. She unfolded the yellow page she had prepared, then placed it down without reading. For 2 months, I asked people to help me find my sister, Annie said. Some listened. Too many decided she had probably left by choice. When the newspaper found her, people asked what she had done wrong before they asked what had been done to her. She looked toward the reporters. My sister lost her job because powerful people accepted a story without asking for proof. Then she lost her name for a while, and strangers used that loss to question her again. Annie placed the first newspaper on the podium, showing the headline that had called Maya a mystery woman. She was never a mystery to me. She was a sister, a worker, a neighbor, and a woman who deserved to be heard before anyone signed away her future. A reporter asked Maya how much compensation she intended to seek. Maya returned to the microphone. I want my medical bills covered, my lost wages restored, and the false dismissal removed. I also want the truth printed wherever the accusation was printed. She glanced at Annie before continuing. After that, I want an independent process for every employee who is told that speaking up will cost them a career. Justice should not depend on whether someone's sister happens to see a newspaper at the right breakfast table. Jonathan announced that Whitmore Development would create an outside reporting system, prohibit family interference in employment decisions, and publish the findings of the investigation. Victoria left with her attorney before the final question. As cameras flashed again, Maya reached for Annie's hand. This time, she did not lower her face. The cracked badge still carried the name the company had tried to reduce to a complaint. Now the entire country had heard Maya Carter say it for herself. 3 months later, Maya still kept a small calendar beside her bed. Each morning, she wrote the date at the top of a fresh page, then added whatever memories had returned since the day before. Some were useful. The password to an old email account, the name of a coworker, the route she once took to the office. Others were smaller. The smell of their mother's hand lotion, a song from the radio in the apartment kitchen, the way Annie always left one cabinet door open. Dr. Brooks told her the uneven progress was normal. Memory does not come back in a straight line, she said during a follow-up appointment. A person can remember a meal from 10 years ago and still forget what happened last Tuesday. Maya glanced at Annie. She reminds me about last Tuesday. Only because you asked me 4 times, Annie said. I asked twice. 4. Maya smiled. Then write down that my sister exaggerates. The medical tests continued to show improvement. Maya could manage her own appointments, travel short distances, and return to most daily routines. Certain gaps remained, and crowded places still tired her, but she no longer treated every missing detail as proof that part of her had vanished. I used to think recovery meant getting every memory back, she told Dr. Brooks. Now I think it means trusting myself even when one doesn't return. That may be the more difficult kind of recovery, the doctor said. Whitmore Development formally removed the dismissal from Maya's employment record. The company paid her lost wages, medical expenses, and compensation reviewed by Caroline Hayes. Maya refused an invitation to return to her old position. Jonathan met her once at Carolyn's office to deliver the offer in person. You would report to an independent division, he explained. The board approved protections that did not exist before. Maya closed the folder without reading beyond the first page. I appreciate the offer, but I spent too long trying to prove I deserved a place there. You did deserve one. I know that now. I don't need to walk back into the same building to prove it. Jonathan accepted her decision. What will you do? A workplace advocacy group asked me to help employees document retaliation complaints. I'm starting part-time. That sounds like important work. It is. Most people who are threatened do not have a billionaire, a newspaper, or an independent attorney suddenly paying attention. The comment was not intended to comfort him, and Jonathan did not treat it that way. The investigation into Victoria's actions remained open. Outside counsel found evidence that she had used an assistant to access company systems, directed human resources staff without authority, and attempted to erase documents after the review began. Whether those actions would lead to criminal charges had not yet been decided. She had resigned from every Whitmore family foundation and no longer lived at the estate. Jonathan remained away from the chairman's position. During that time, the company created an outside reporting system, hired an independent employment monitor, and prohibited family members from communicating with human resources about individual employees. Reports on workplace equality would be published twice a year. Ellen told Jonathan that policies mattered only when powerful people obeyed them during uncomfortable moments. That sounds like something Maya would say, he replied. It sounds like something you should remember without being told. He gave a small nod. I'm working on that. Jonathan also offered to pay Annie's college tuition. She refused the private arrangement. I don't want my education tied to what happened to Maya, she told him. It would have no conditions. Maybe not on paper, but I would always know why I received it. What would you consider fair? Annie came prepared. She proposed a scholarship program for lower-income employees and workers in the company's community projects. Applicants would follow the same process, and an outside committee would choose recipients. Jonathan read the proposal. You've already completed the application. I don't ask other people to follow rules I won't follow myself. The scholarship committee accepted Annie several weeks later. She enrolled in community college with plans to study social work and criminal justice. When the letter arrived, she read it twice before handing it to Maya. You did it, Maya said. We did it. No, I helped you survive some hard years. You filled out that application. Annie folded the letter carefully. Then you're taking me out for dinner. With what money? You received a settlement. Maya gave her a look of false offense. So that is why you stayed beside me at the hospital. Mostly, they moved into a small house a few blocks from their old apartment. It had a narrow front porch, 2 bedrooms, and kitchen cabinets that stayed attached when opened. Mrs. Ruth came over on moving day with peach cobbler and several opinions about where the sofa should go. Ellen sent a set of dishes. Marcus delivered a box of Maya's recovered office items, including the cracked badge. Maya placed the badge in a drawer instead of displaying it. That used to be the only clue anyone had about me, she said. I don't need it to introduce me anymore. On a Sunday morning in January, Annie woke to the smell of cornbread and coffee. She found Maya in the kitchen, wearing an old sweater and arguing with the radio because the reception faded whenever she moved the wooden spoon holding the antenna. You remember how to fix that, Annie said. I remember that it works. I still don't understand why. On the table lay the morning newspaper. Maya's photograph covered half the front page. This time she was standing outside the Workplace Advocacy Center, wearing the blue cardigan and speaking with several former employees who had come forward after her press conference. The headline read, Maya Carter turns personal injustice into hope for working women. Maya sat down and read the article slowly. It described her work, the reforms at Whitmore Development, and the growing number of people seeking help after retaliation at work. It used her full name in the first sentence. No mystery woman, Annie said. No former employee accused of misconduct. Just Maya Carter. Maya touched the photograph. I still don't remember everything. Annie poured coffee into 2 mismatched cups and sat across from her. That's all right. I'll remember with you. Maya reached for her hand. Church bells carried through the closed window while the cornbread cooled between them. 2 months earlier, a newspaper had helped Annie find her sister. Now another newspaper told the world that Maya Carter had never been nameless, only unheard. This story reminds us that silence can protect injustice when powerful people refuse to question what is convenient. True accountability begins when we listen to those who have been ignored, admit our failures, and use influence to repair harm rather than hide it. Maya and Annie also show that dignity cannot be bought, family does not abandon its own, and justice means more than compensation. It means restoring a person's name, voice, and right to be believed. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.